So today I'm here to discuss a topic on history optional. This topic is so fundamental that this is the first topic which I give the introduction to even GS students also in their first class. So if you have seen or if you may have seen, so in last class or in last video 1 year back I have taken the graph of Indian economy. So that was graph of economy. I'll make sure to post the link of that in the comments of this video. So graph of Indian economy we have taken in ancient age. This time I am taking graph of administration. Economy is already done. Administration I am going to take. Before I take administration, first few fundamental things. This is a king with his bureaucracy. Take any kingdom, doesn't matter. King running with his bureaucracy. You could today take it like president, prime minister, and then IAS officer, SP, DM, all of them. Then there comes feudal lords. Zamidar, Jagirdar, Iqtadar, Mukti, Mansabdar are these bureaucracy. So Jamidar, Jagirdar. And then come the people. People like us. The best condition is democracy. That is the best. Best condition if a state is democratic. People are allowed to choose their representative. People are allowed to interfere in the politics, interfere in the administration. That is the best case scenario. But as we are talking about past, this is rarely available. Although it is available in ancient age. We have Ganasang, we have Rigvedic age, we have elected king, Rajan, etc. This is the best case scenario. And there is no doubt about it. If you can't prove democracy is good, you are as good as illiterate, or anyone is as good as illiterate if he can't prove democracy is the best form of government. Many times in class, a student try to say, sir, dictatorship is good, or sir, that type of single party rule is good. If you can't prove democracy is the best form of government so far, it means you have less knowledge for various reasons, because the purpose of administration is welfare of these people. We can have a separate discussion on that, but not here. So this is the best form of government. Among these two, a strong king ruling with his strong bureaucracy or strong feudal lords. It is a settled debate that this is the better one. A strong king ruling with his bureaucracy. Bureaucracy means whom he could appoint, whom he pays, whom he could dismiss, who has the fear of something against them. If a IAS officer you will see if is beating, you must have seen many times your relative will say, ki bhai, I have a government job, meri sarkari naukri, I will not interfere here. If some fight is going on, to those who have government job, they run away from there. Because obviously the bureaucrat who's on the pay scale of king will fear a bit about it. And the worst form is these feudal lords, zamidars. These are the worst type of government if they are powerful. So people to are best, but not in our discussion. In these two. So just few scenarios, few examples, and then I'll start the graph. Because first I have to establish what is better for us, what is better for people. Which administration we will consider better, Mughals or later Mughals, Guptas or later Guptas, Mauryans or Guptas, Delhi Sultanate or Mughals, Mughals or British. So whenever we have to compare, so we have some indicators to compare. Take one example. If there is SP and there is local, in every district of India, especially in the northern part of India, you will find some, not exactly, they are not criminals, they are called Bahubali. They are the henchmen, the strong men. I don't want to take name of any, but you will see in election parties take their use. They are the ones who have the good hold. They are the ones who run their kangaroo courts also. I don't know what to call them. You can call them Bahubali or strong men or powerful men, criminals, semi-criminal, political criminals. So these are the strong men of the cities. Who should be strong? SP. Who's running under? King or president. Always he should be more strong than a strong man. That's the only way law and order could be better. I am not saying SP cannot be corrupt. I am not saying that SP is always a godly figure. I am just saying in general parlance, as a general indicator, SP should be strong than this is strong man. That is the general rule number one, the basic thumb rule of administration. Or take one example. Abhi just we are around the corner, Lok Sabha elections result will come within days. Voting is all over. So, this scenario, case number one, the party you love wins. The party you love wins. But you have a fight with a local criminal. A local criminal comes, the strong man comes and take your plot. And you have a fight with the strong man. Case number two, party you hate wins. Whichever party you hate, that wins. But you have good relation with your local strongman. Friendship with this is strong man. Bahubali, whoever he is, God knows they are not defined even. I hope everyone would love this situation. Because he lives near you. Controlling him is the biggest problem of every administration, of everyone's life. They are the one who can make your life a living hell. No administration could come to save you if they are strong. You will see their strength in UP, Bihar is pulling the entire economy down. We generally blame casteism for it. Every part of this country is casteist and communal. Majority of places vote on the basis of caste and communalism. The only problem is law and order either cannot control them or administration use them. Parties use them to win the election. This culture, you must have heard the cases like Rangdari, Rangbaji, whatever the case, extortions. Then they want their cut in every administrative affair. These are the one, if they are strong, entire law and order and administration will dip. Everyone fear them. They are the biggest headache of the people also. And they are biggest headache of the administration also. When they are strong, it is the worst form of government. People are strong, that's the best form of government. In ancient history, majority of the time, before 20th century, their strength majority of the time was absent. I'm not talking about very primitive societies, we will start from them only. But their strength is the best, that people are strong. Gram Pradhan has more power, not the strong man. People could appoint whoever they want. That's the best. But if it is not available, among these you have to choose. Among these two evils, state strong is always better than these Jamidar, Gunda Bahubali, not that Katappa wala Bahubali. Bahubali means those strong men, feudal lords. Their strength is always worst. Their oppression is always more than the state's administration 99.9% of the times. They have no law, no rule, nothing. In politics also you have seen when they become the part of ministers, their own gundagardi comes down. You see any party, anyone, I don't want to name, anyone, if he from Bahubali becomes minister, so he stops doing violence openly. Then he tries to show that he is the servant of the people. Their strength is always bad. Now, what does it mean? It means a centralized state, higher centralization. A centralized state is always better for law and order. General parlance, 99% of the time. Exceptions exist only even in the natural sciences, chemistry, physics. So here also, I am not talking about exact exceptions. Higher centralization is better law and order. Take one example. Mughals versus later Mughals. Mughals are always considered better than them. Take any example. In Mauryan versus Guptas. Historians always side with Mauryan, although it's a separate debate of historiography how centralized the Mauryans were, because in modern administration we rely more on a book named Arthashastra and we take it on its face value. But that's a later discussion. Mauryan is considered best. And it will not be a very beautiful explanation, but still, even the problem of these two parties, why BJP is more successful, one reason is it is more centralized. Inside the party, centralization is more. That's why their promises, their manifesto, their election fighting style is more efficient. Today they are not as centralized. And that's why it's not about democracy or it's not about which party has which issue and all that also must be there. I'm not discussing that. I'm just saying more centralized is more efficient. I'm not about democracy. Apart from democracy, more centralization is better. So let's see the graph of this centralization in our history. If you see, you may say so this is the graph of centralization. I'll elaborate upon it. This is Rig Vedic age, a highly decentralized but democratized. This is the Rajput period. This is Iltutmish. Balban. I'm not describing that, that's why writing. This is Alauddin Khilji. Muhammad bin Tughlaq tried to centralize it more than need. His time did not allow it. It breaks away from Firoz Shah. Started dipping. The tribal rule of Lodhis was one of the most decentralized. That is the main reason of the tribal polity of Afghan, that it do not have that centralization. Akbar started centralizing. And in the bid to centralize only, brother killing was a feature. No brother is allowed to show any disrespect, any disobedience, nothing. Shahjahan killed his 18 brother. Sabal sagai na sahe, sabla mein nahi seer. Khurram 18 mariya, keh kaka keh veer. 18. And then Aurangzeb is very famous. And he's at the peak of this. And then it further dipped. Later Mughal Nawab and Nizams started ruling. But then Warren Hastings, Cornwallis, Dalhousie, Curzon, and then to democratic India, Republic age. Today the central government is so centralized that it has everyone's Aadhaar card, everyone's information account. They can even tap, or they can even know whatever we are doing or whatever we are trying to do. Whatever we are discussing on this video is also could be available to state. State could find out whatever we are doing. But the best thing about this period is that it is under democracy. That's why this is not a problem. So this centralization is centralization of administration, but yes, under the control of people. So democratic centralization is the best type of centralization. Now, ancient age is this. This is ancient history. 7th century. So I am discussing only this part of the history. let's forget that and let's discuss this part of history from Rig Vedic age onwards. So Rig Vedic age is one of the highly decentralized age. If we see the feature of these decentralization, so here we had elected king. King who's not even hereditary. Father cannot give rule to his son. What control he will have on the state? Jan used to elect the king, he was called Rajan. Elected by Jan, that's why the name Rajan. Rajan name is even older than Kshatriya. The name for Kshatriya for early few verses of Rig Veda is Rajanya. Kshatriya word comes from later, Kshatriya, Kshetra, when they started ruling in the territories. Rig Vedic age is a wandering age. That's why you will see in Rig Vedic age, Jan, Vish, Gram, Kul. Kul is family. One part of Gram was Tola or Toli. Even today, the part of villages, the hamlet colonies are called Tola or Toli. Toli means the one who wander. And above Gram was Vish. Vish means community. You will never see villages in India existing in isolation. There are always cluster of 4 or 5 villages. Those are called Vish. When they enter somewhere, it is called Pravesh. Pravesh. When they enter and start doing something there, it is called Nivesh. All the words are from Vish. And later this Vish word become Vishay. Vishay. Vishay is to ease its pronunciation. Vish is not easy. Yes, in Indian villages, no one called Bandar, people called Bandar. So likewise, Vishay, Vish comes from, Vishay comes from Vish. So Vishay will be later unit in entire ancient history, their discussion. So, Vedic people were wandering people. They are not settled. Irregular tax, or you can call voluntary tax. Ab wandering people, what tax they have? They are wandering in the Toli. They are doing Pravesh and Nivesh here and there. And these wandering people have no tax to pay. They pay whatever they feel. For example, today what we call as Chanda. People may pay, people may not pay. This tax is Bali. So a king who's elected and who's always have the lack of money, he can't do anything. Anything means, if you compare with the later kings, then when he have no money, so obviously he wants the support of people. If he is launching some new project, any new project, he wants to buy some new sticks, so he will have to have this assembly of people. He will call the assemblies. So controlled by assemblies. Sabha, Samiti, Vidhata, Gan, all assemblies. The assemblies will decide what is right, what is wrong, what is to take, what not to take. It's like Prime Minister going to Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha to get the budget approval. Budget approval, ki what we want, we could spend, what is the tax which is given by the people. I have to spend the tax. So Prime Minister taking approval of assemblies, Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, that's why Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, so almost same type of relation. Where Prime Minister is dependent on Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha for budget approval. Here Rajan is dependent on Sabha, Samiti, Vidhata, Gana. That's why be ready for a question. Analyze the democratic trends in the ancient Indian administration. So we have a lot of topics on that. Abhi we are discussing this only. So controlled by assemblies, elected king, voluntary tax. Then no wartime army. Whenever the war will appear, so only the villagers will be managed. When king do not have a standing army, imagine his own 10 villagers start coming to beat him. So he can't save himself because he don't have the standing army. Today, if anyone try to attack on, God forbid, attack on Rashtrapati Bhavan, so there are army units, cantonment of Dhaula Kuan will first mobilize and he will take care of those attacks. Imagine a king who do not have his standing army. He is dependent on the people. When you are dependent on the people during the war, so obviously you can't overpower your own people. You need their support. तो नो स्टैंडिंग आर्मी. For wartime, entire gen will fight. Even the female fight. And don't think them about a very developed kingdom. See, two colonies, two poor colonies, settler colonies. kabhi dekho outside those Banjara, those who sit in the tents. When they fight, so men fight men, women fight women, children fight children, dogs fight dog. Likewise, no standing army, everyone fight. Male, female. That's the good position of women. So there is a separate graph of position of women also for some later day. So no standing army. And the most important aspect, his main job was to protect cattle. Imagine a king who has no army, no tax, no hereditary succession, controlled by his own people. And main job is protecting cattle, bhaise charana. So to protect cattle, he was called Gop. So term was king for Gop. Tax is Bali, name Rajan, and controlled by his assemblies. A highly decentralized, but the best thing is it is democratic in nature. That's why this is low centralization but not negative. It is democratic in nature. That's why it is not as bad as it suggests. Over the time, we come to later Vedic age. Later Vedic age. Have a lot of improvements. Kings started becoming hereditary. Started becoming. देखो, whenever, take any party, I don't want to name Congress, Samajwadi Party, DMK, RJD, Shiv Sena, any party. On paper, none of them is hereditary. But because they are ruled by a strong man always makes sure that his son is elected. And then he makes sure that his son is elected. Even Holy Roman Empire was elected. There were great electors. But for 700 years, only Habsburg family used to succeed. So anything who's elected, a strong man wants to make it hereditary. He always tries to make it hereditary. And it becomes hereditary over time. 99.9% of elected offices, if they do not have enough checks and balances like independent judiciary, independent election commission, etc., will become hereditary, on paper at least. So they also became hereditary. It is the beginning of hereditary. I'm not saying later Vedic age all were hereditary. But yes, kings started becoming hereditary. Hereditary kings. Kingship hai, but kings, let's write kings. So hereditary kings after father. And because a father wants his son to be projected as that he is worthy of my rule, the Brahmins came into being, or Brahmin came to help. So Brahmins will make the coronations, make the rituals. Brahmins will make Ashwamedh, Hiranyagarbha, Vajpayee, and many other. So these great rituals were used so that father could project his son, my son is the most worthy. And that's why Brahmins and Kshatriya status of both rose simultaneously. It is called symbiosis. Kshatriya giving the status to Brahmins, they are at the top of society, they will tell what God wants. And Brahmins will help Kshatriya. Your son has all these Hiranyagarbha, Ashwamedh, Rajasuya, all these yagya. And he is the worthy of succession. So we come to the hereditary king. And this is the symbiosis of Brahmins and Kshatriya. And this also shows why rituals started dominating. Then tax from voluntary became obligatory tax. On paper it is voluntary. But now Bali is an obligatory tax. You will have to pay. How to visualize it? It's like in a school or in college, some farewell is being organized or some festival is being organized. You may pay money, you may not pay money. But your friends, entire class and entire that monitor and all the management, student among themselves, if they are planning, they will make sure that you have to pay. तो it is also voluntary on paper still. Bali is voluntary, but in later Vedic age you will have to pay. It's like ये जो चंदा मांगते हैं for various festivals in colony. जैसे if you are a member of some trade committee, तो trade committee will demand chanda. It is voluntary on paper, but you will have to pay it. Here it became obligatory in reality. Now if a king has his own taxation, he will rule by bureaucracy. Vrajpati, Purohit, Senani, Akshpatal Adhyaksh. Now he don't need the assembly. When he could force people to pay tax, why he will call them and give respect in assemblies? So decline of assemblies. Only the elite assembly of Sabhasad, elites, that remain, because king obviously cannot easily suppress all the elites. All the other assemblies decline. So it is the decline of assembly. Centralization further rose. Then came Mahajanpad age. And if I have to write the times of these, so it is 1500 to 1000 BC. Guess of R.S. Sharma, Max Muller, 1200. Now historians have pushed it back to 1500. 1000 to 600 BC. Then came Mahajanpad age. Acha, here Rig Vedic age Jan, later Vedic age settled territory. That's why Kshetra. जो विश है wandering विश started settling. That's why the rulers were called Kshatriya, because they ruled the Kshetra, Janpad. So Jan, Janpad. And then 16 of the great Janpad are called Mahajanpad. So polity also Jan, Janpad, Mahajanpad. In any other video, I'll discuss the table also. There are 30 differences, around 25 to 30 differences between Rig Vedic age, later Vedic age, Mahajanpad age. So if you remember those 30 differences, these topics are self-explanatory. Mahajanpad age. 600 to around 400 BC. Mahajanpad age. So first, urbanization. It is an urbanized age. Trade could give as much tax ki agriculture cannot even imagine that much. Obviously, agriculture is paying more. I'm not saying as a percentage agriculture is more. Agriculture is always more than 50% of GDP till 1950. So I'm not saying trade on large is giving more, but yes, after trade, the tax collection is easy. Cash appeared. Tax is collected near the capital. So it is easy to collect it. So high taxation. Irregular taxation, regular taxation, high taxation. The first king, Bimbisar, had the standing army now. No standing army, no standing army. Later Vedic age also no standing army. Here, standing armies. First king to have a standing army was Shrenik Bimbisar. Bimbisar. You yourself can easily imagine, if a king is having a standing army, he can fight the enemies also, but he could crush his opposition in the country also. So Shrenik Bimbisar. Drop the R, as in Matra becomes Mata, Pitra becomes Pita. Shrenik means Sena. Senik Bimbisar. So he had the first standing army. Forget about assemblies. First empire appeared, imperial. There is a separate topic of what is empire and kingdom, but just by idea you can understand empire means imperial, the expanding one. Magad was the first empire. So from this humble elected king with no money, protecting the cattle, in 1000 years we appear to an empire which is paying the tax, have the standing army, expanding across from Ujjain till Bengal, MP to Bengal, entire Ganga Yamuna plains that has captured. So this is Mahajanpad age, relatively more centralized. Then came part of Mahajanpad only, but Mahapadma, Nand Empire. Now the Nand empires further increased centralization. It is indicated in their 3 titles. Nand kings took the title. First, they claim we are the owner of entire land of the empire. Each and every piece of land in this empire is owned by the king. He called himself Akhil Bhuvanpati. Akhil means entire, Akhil Bharatiya Ayurvigyan Sansthan, All India Institute of Medical Science. Akhil means all. Bhuvan means land. Pati means owner. Akhil Bhuvanpati. Owner of the entire land. Second title they took is the sole authority in their Rashtra. Although term is since later Vedic age, but they are the ones who started using it in this reference. Ekrat. There is one more yajna by the king who defeated these Ekrat, and he called the Samrat. Sam means multiple, Samhita, Samahit. So a king who has multiple crown and thrones of Ekrat is called Samrat. So Samrat is the title which came in common parlance later. This is the title Ekrat, sole authority in the Rashtra. They do, I remember Rajsui or Samyagya they have to do to call themselves Ekrat. And then they say we don't only have a standing army. Bimbisar's days are gone, just a standing army. Our army is not only standing but an aggressive army. And that's why they used to call themselves Ugrasen. Ugrasen. And that's why Megasthenes described, writing of Arrian, Megasthenes described last Nand king as Agrames. Dhananand was described Agrames. We think it is the distortion of Ugrasen. So Greeks called Dhananand, the last Mauryan king, who's toppled by Chanakya and Chandragupta Maurya, as Agrames. We think that name Agrames is the distortion of the title Ugrasen which they have taken. The king who's the owner of entire land, who's the sole authority, whose wish is the constitution, and the king who has the aggressive army, Ugrasen. So Nand kings are also increasing this centralization. At the top of this is Mauryan Empire. I mean, I have increased the pace, although there are various other things, but it will take a lot of time. So Mauryan Empire. Mauryan Empire, with a caveat, we are reading Mauryan Empire as written in the Arthashastra of Kautilya, or by the Ashokan inscriptions, or by the Megasthenes Indica. These are the 3 sources of Mauryan Empire, largely. Main is Arthashastra of Kautilya. So in Mauryan Empire, no office, first there is no landlord, no concept of landlord till Mauryan age. Till Mauryan age, we do not accept the concept of landlord. Landlord will appear when Satwan installed with land grants, and Kushans will allow the defeated kings to rule. Before that, Mauryans had no system of landlord. A highly centralized system, no landlord. Every king's dream is to eliminate landlord. No king wants landlord. But it is the helplessness of the time and their estate and their resources and their revenue that they have to accept the landlords. So no king wants landlord. Every king has to accept landlord. After Mauryans, landlord appeared and they became the headache of the states. Every state wanted to eliminate them. Ye Akbar and Sher Shah started doing this patta and kabuliyat. Alauddin Khilji tried to eliminate Rai Ranka Rawat. Then British, first to Cornwallis started British state on the basis of landlord, but soon after Cornwallis, no one accepted these landlord, permanent settlement. And why Cornwallis? Because he himself was a landlord. And he thought landlord are the best type of people. So it was only his personal choice because he himself was landlord. That is the reason. Otherwise, no state want landlord. So no landlord means a centralized state, good for king. Second thing, a very strong spy system. Spy system is must for centralization. You are running a party, an office, a business, a shop, your family, your country. Without a spy, you cannot ensure no matter how strong your administration is. Administration will not save you from your brother, will not save you from someone poisoning your food, will not save you from revolts. Spy are the one who give the information. I hope you all are intelligent enough to understand why the spy system is must for centralization. So Kautilya described two types of spies, Sanstha Sanchari, then 100 types of Sancharis. Students, Kapatik Chhatra, Gud Purush, Udashthit, Vishkanya, Vaidehak, various types of Sanchari. So senior spy, junior spy. Ashok described Pulisani Pativedak. This Megasthenes described Episcopoi. All this is spy. We don't know how the exact of them, all these three sources is true, but because all these three sources talks about a spy system means there must have been a spy system, which is must for centralization. Apart from king, no office hereditary. No hereditary office. Only king is hereditary. Apart from, it's not ki after father, son takes the office. In the age of Samudragupta, we will see his poet, this Hari Sen, writer of Prayag Prashasti. So his father was also Mahadan Nayak. And the second post was this Sandhi Vigrahak. So he has two offices in one. Concentration of power at lower level, negative feature. His father was also Chief Justice, he was also Chief Justice, negative feature. And even today, judiciary is being criticized. The father of present Chief Justice was also Chief Justice. These days, just like Hari Sen, he was also Chief Justice, his father was also Chief Justice. So hereditary posts are always bad. Only king is hereditary in Mauryan age. Then, apart from this hereditary office, selected bureaucracy, selected by exam. Bureaucracy selected by exams. Four types of exam Kautilya described. Fear exam, dharma exam, economic exam, love exams. Bhayopad Shuddh fear exam, Kamopad Shuddh love exam, Dharmopad Shuddh law exam, Arthopad Shuddh economic exam. You have to clear any one of them. Clear any one of them, get the type of job associated to it. Clear the economic test, get the job of tax collector. So bureaucracy selected by exam is always best. Always best. British introduced it in 19th century. Bureaucracy selected by exams. At every place you will find two offices. Samahart Sannidhata, Sthanik Gop, Rajjuk Yukt. Two offices at one place. We call it checks and balances. If you have to understand checks and balances, so management decide that I will teach for 6 days and 7th day a teacher will come and will talk to students and understand what my performance, how I am teaching. No checks and balances means I will be that teacher. 6th day I will teach and 7th day I will come under a separate designation. I am coming to take the review. Checks and balance means some other teacher will come to take that review. I hope you all can easily understand what is better for the administration, what is better for the student, what is better for everyone. Better for me is that I should be the same teacher. I will always intend and I will always give the reasons why I should be the teacher, why I should be that reviewer. But the job of management and the state and everyone is that I should not be that. If I am the same teacher who's teaching 6 days and 7th day come to take the review, it means no checks and balances. It means I am more powerful. And the management could not put effort, could not control me. College head of the department, principal could not control his teachers. Teacher wants to teach whatever he wants. I am teaching history, mood swing, I started teaching something else. This is one of the worst type of situations. Student cannot complain anywhere in college authorities ki how teacher is teaching. Checks and balances means that every office of bureaucracy has checks and balances. That's why you will see transport company never send the driver alone because he may sell the diesel. They send one other person in the guise of cleaner. So that's why we call it checks and balances. If you are a landlord, you will always want your tenants to fight with each other. Never have love with each other. If tenants will fight with each other, your condition, your control on your house will be always better. That who is stealing electricity, who is doing which, who is doing what. So that's what we call checks and balances. Mauryan administration had a strong check and balance. So that is checks and balances. Salaries in the Mauryan age were cash salaries. Cash salaries always better for centralization. For example, if this is the state and you are ruling from here, if you will pay cash salary to this officer, these officers, and you stop their salary, no one can dare to come to your capital of New Delhi and ask you to pay up. If president stops someone's salary, no officer has the guts to go to Rashtrapati Bhavan and say, why my salary is stopped. But if payment will be by land, as we will see in later Gupta age, he will create a personal kingdom. And to take these land back, state will have to send the part of army. Entire army cannot be sent because you have to defend borders also. They all will revolt, it will become a headache of kingdom. Kingdom will not be able to even control them. And that is the reason the best salaries are cash salaries. Mauryans pay up the cash salary. After Mauryans, post-Mauryan age came Satvahans. They started the system of land grant. Land grants resulting in feudalism. In Mauryan age, Samant means neighboring king. Samant, sam, equal, samanantar, samkaleen, sam means equal. Till Mauryan age in Arthashastra, Samant means neighboring king. In Satvahan age, Samant means feudal lord, or later Samant became feudal lord. Feudalism began. They started giving land grants. This resulted in the beginning of feudalism. So in Satvahan administration, we start hearing the terms like Bhoj, Mahabhoj. So in Mahajanpad also we have heard the term Bhoj, but their Bhoj means village head. Bimbisar called 84,000 Bhojak, Gram Bhojak. Those were village heads. But now Bhoj means landlord. So landlords started in Satvahan age, feudalism. And then came in the similar age, Kushans. If you have defeated a king, it's not an interactive class to ask, but if you have defeated a king, it is always better to kill the king. Never allow him to rule below you because he is showing loyalty. Everyone after defeat will show loyalty, but the moment you will go back to your kingdom or capital, he will plan the sovereignty again. If a crisis will come in your empire, he will always try to take benefit of the crisis. That's why it's always better to kill a king if you can. If you cannot, so obviously you can't. But if you could, just kill the king. That's why Lenin said that Tsars could not be left alive. In Yekaterinburg, entire family was massacred down. The reason is if you can kill a king, do kill a king. Adoption is not an option. Because as famously said by Ziaul Haq, there are two graves. Sorry, there is one grave and two persons. Ziaul Haq and Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. One grave, two persons. One has to sleep. If I will not make Zulfikar Bhutto sleep, I will have to sleep there. Sleep means die. Kushans allowed defeated kings to rule and called them satraps. That's why a good thing about Kushan is we need not to read their administration because their empire was not centrally administered. Empire was divided into various satraps. We will hear about and we will talk about a separate dynasty called Western satraps. Satraps word comes from Persian satrap. And today the Indianized word is Chhatrap. Chhatrap. Chhatrap means local governor. So Kushans ruled via or allowed defeated kings to rule. Subordinate kings. They called them satraps. Then came Gupta Empire. I'll have to wrap it. I'll try to do it fast. Gupta Empire. A relatively very decentralized administration. First thing, rising practice of land grants, increased feudalism. Offices, hereditary offices. So we have seen so many talks about the famous example of Hari Sen himself of Prayag Prashasti. So offices became hereditary. The reason of hereditary offices was, or I should have written that first, because the declining state, when the later Gupta age economy declined, so instead of paying cash salary, they started paying salary by land grant. So land became a piece of salary. So when you have given the land, the officer have made the personal small sort of kingdom there. And after that, father want his son to take that. Stopping the cash salary looks less cruel. Taking the land back creates a lot of problems. So they have started paying salary via land instead of cash. Because of this, offices started becoming hereditary. Less taxation, obviously. In Mauryan, we will see a lot of economic bureaucracy. Why to leave that also? Economic bureaucracy. Whereas in Guptas, we have seen the lack of economic bureaucracy. It means taxation must be low. Lack of economic bureaucracy. Economic bureaucracy. Then we don't hear about strong spy system under Guptas. In the book of Gupta administration, Kamandak, Nitisar, etc., spy system is lack of spy system. Lack of checks and balances. When we will see the judicial system of Guptas, the judicial head of Guptas were executive heads only. Under Guptas, the provincial executive head was Uparik, judicial head Uparik. It's like Chief Minister and High Court Chief Justice are same. District Collector, District Judge are same. Cornwallis in 1793 divided them. So under Guptas, head of Governor of Province was also head of Justice of Province. Not in Mauryan age. In Mauryan age, there was a separate department. Head of District Administration, Ayukt, Vishaypati, who is also called Ayukt, is head of judiciary also. So no checks and balances, lack of checks and balances. Lack of checks and balances. A lot of landlords. Then, the Gupta administration is a relatively decentralized administration. Relatively, if you compare with the other times. Better if you compare with the later times. So that is Gupta administration. Then in 7th century, administration of Harshvardhan is not clearly described, but yes, in the administration of Harshvardhan, which will be the last topic, Harshvardhan, Pulkeshi II, and the clash of Harshvardhan versus Pulkeshi II versus Mahendra and Narsinghavarman, Pallav. So Pulkeshi defeated Harsh in north and this Mahendravarman in south. And son of Mahendravarman, Narsinghavarman will take the revenge of Pulkeshi. So death of Pulkeshi and Harshvardhan close the ancient history. So in Harshvardhan, Ban Bhatt described 22 types of feudal lords. Mahasamant, Ati Samant, Shatru Samant, 22 types of feudal lord. not total 22 types of feudal lords. Age of feudalism, after which age of feudalism appears. Then comes Rajput. Among the Rajput, the great problem. Elder son is given the throne, but the younger son are also given the small kingdoms. In Rajasthan, you must have heard the term Tikana. The most disobedient type of system. Younger brothers are the biggest problem of the elder brother. When the enemy army appear on the borders of Rajput kingdom, enemy fight later, their brothers start revolting first. And they are not even killed also. Disobedience among the Rajput polity was accepted fact. It's like today's political party. See, anyone changing the party, so again shamelessly they come together and do this alliance. So like today in our political system, defection, making alliance sometimes with this party, sometimes with that party is accepted. Koi bura bhi nahi manta, no one feel bad also. Among Rajput also this type of defections, this type of treachery are so accepted कि Rajputs, even after infinite bravery, cannot form a centralized state. The state was highly decentralized. And that's why you will see no Rajput state could centralize everyone else. And then though, it's a separate story. So this is the administration of ancient age. So Mauryan are at the peak of that centralization. This comparison is asked multiple times. If I have to time it for once last time so that Nand are in 5th to 4th century BC or 4th only, why 5th? Their time is a bit more precise because the availability of Greek and Puranic chronology. Satvahan Kushan is post-Mauryan age. Guptas are, although Sri Gupta start from 240, but Gupta period start from 319, so 319 to 550 AD. Vishnu Gupta. And Harshvardhan is 7th century. So this is the entire comparison. Means a basic. It is so basic that I make this graph in first class of GS even. We should first know that centralization is good or bad. So this is the graph of ancient age, and that is the. And you will see whenever state starts declining, first thing a king do is make the landlords hereditary. Here you will see Guptas started making land hereditary. Landlords or land grants or land hereditary offices. So here Guptas did it, Firoz Shah did it, he made Ikta hereditary. Here Shah Jahan and Aurangzeb, and later though the practice started. So economic decline appeared even before. Aurangzeb looked centralized, but empire started slipping from his hand. तो here Jagirs were made hereditary. Jagirs hereditary. Those Jagir were called Tamga, Al-Tamga Jagir. And every declining state, you will see today Congress is declining, and in Himachal Pradesh the main revolt was CM's son wants to become CM. Hereditary offices. BJP is more centralized, they can dismiss chief ministers even at the peak of their power, no revolt happens. So declining states always are under the pressure by its officers to make the office hereditary. Sometimes they do it. Guptas did, Firoz Shah did, Aurangzeb started doing Al-Tamga Jagir, and later to all the offices, ye Murshid Quli Khan, Asaf Jahi dynasty, Saadat Khan of Awadh, all of them made their hereditary, Carnatic Nawab, all of them, Muhammad Ali, they all have made their offices hereditary. So the main struggle of the administration is not against the enemy. Army is fight against the enemy, but administration is fight between the king and the subordinates. Both wants to exert the power. Okay, so this is the graph of administrative efficiency or centralization. ठीक है, thanks.